Hi everyone, welcome to a new devlog. In this episode we will see how I developed the enemy spawner and the modifications I made to make it as performant as possible. So let's get started. First of all, I wanted to develop an enemy spawner because I want to be able to manually place enemies in areas of interest. The spawner works by area and spawns a random number of enemies given a range. That gives a bit of diversity and makes the game slightly different each time the spawner is activated. On the other hand, one of the challenges I had was the difference between behaviors depending on whether the enemy was manually placed in the level or spawned with the spawner. There are several things that change. The first is spawn enemies won't have patrol routes, so instead of patrolling, they will be in an idle position. In the behavior tree, now I look at the patrol state to see if it has a route or not to determine its behavior. On the other hand, and this is related to performance, enemies are spawned when the game starts, but they remain in a dormant state. Hauling Tails is an open world, so it doesn't make sense to have active enemies scattered around the level if we are not going to see them on camera. Having enemies with active AI impact heavily in the performance. This is something I learned from my last game, Crumbling World, a randomly generated game in which the level and enemies were generated during gameplay. That's when I came up with this solution that works very well. In this dormant state, they have the meshes disabled to avoid draw calls, and their tick and AI disabled as well to improve performance. The dormant enemies are awakened when the player enters the area. When that happens, the enemies show up with a special animation that can be set up for each class of enemy. So what's next? I want to improve the reactivity of the enemies. Right now, when they are in a cooldown, it's very easy to leave their field of view, which is not very realistic. So I want, even if they don't move, to turn to look at the player, giving them a more natural behavior. On the other hand, I want to implement the combat slot system. When the player faces multiple enemies, each enemy takes a slot. When these are all full, the enemies without an assigned slot have to wait until a new slot is available. I think this will make the combat more interesting, fair and realistic. Instead of receiving attacks from all enemies, the player will only be attacked by slotted enemies. The number of slots will change depending on the difficulty level and the zone in the game. And that was all this week. I hope you like these episodes where we talk a little bit more about game and combat design. And if you like this content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. And leave comments if you have any questions or suggestions. Thank you very much for watching, have a great week and see you next Monday.